Good to go.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's January 13th, 2022. Welcome, everybody. Before we get started, I just want to review the meeting norms for everybody on the call or joining our meeting today. And I'm also going to go over how you can participate if you're a community member. So the meeting norms are keep the best interests of the school and children in mind while balancing the needs of the taxpayers. Make decisions based on clear information. Honor the board's decisions. Keep meetings short and on time. Stick to the agenda. Keep remarks short and to the point. Everyone gets a chance to talk before people take a second turn, and respect others and their ideas. So I would appreciate if everyone could make note of those norms and please try your best to abide by them. With that, I want to let you know that for people who are joining us from the community, we have an agenda, and it is a very full agenda tonight. And we have a point for public comment and student voice. Those are for items that are not on the agenda. If there's something that you'd like to speak about that is on the agenda, then please put your name in the chat. Put your name, the city or town that you are from, and the agenda item you would like to speak on. And when it is your turn to speak during that agenda item, I will call on you and you get 2 minutes. And I'm not a real stickler for time, but I try to keep it to 2 minutes, please. And with that, we will move on. Andrea?
We have a phone number ending in 12, and I'd also like to confirm that the Sue is Sue Paxman.
Okay, good question. So we have a Sue.
Diane Solomon is on 12.
Thank you, Diane.
The S is Sue Paxman.
Great, thank you, Sue.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, we'll go on to additions or deletions with a motion to approve the agenda. So I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Guy.
Guy gives a first and Gina gives a thumbs up for a second. I'm going to recommend that we remove shift 5.8 through 5.12. They're all policies. I'd like to move those to our next meeting. We have a lot to talk about tonight, and we also have an executive session planned. And so I think those can be tabled until our next meeting. So if it's okay with Gina and Guy, is that okay to make those amendments? Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda? Andrea?
I just wanted to note, so when they are presented at the next meeting, that agenda item 5.10, first reading of electronic surveillance, F26.
Yeah.
It said that presentation to the board will include a copy of the amended model policy, a copy of an unedited version of the BSBA model policy, and a copy of the local policy F41. And I noticed those were not in tonight's packet. So if we can try to make sure that they get put in for discussion.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that. And now we will have time to make sure we have those in the packet for our next meeting. Thank you for that. All right. Any other additions or deletions? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. And I'm going to go through the list. Alice. Alice may have stepped away. Guy, yes. Sarah. I'm missing Sarah. Hold on. I think I need to adjust what I can see on my
stuff. All these people are friends and they're giving thumbs up.
Alice and Sarah, they both have their thumbs up.
So I'm sorry. I'm using a different computer tonight, and I realized I didn't have my the number of people I could see on maximum. So okay, let's start again. Alice, perfect. Guy, yes. Sarah, thank you. Giuliano,
Aye.
thank you. Tim, yes. Chris Parker, yes. Gina, yes. Renee, yes. Okay, so that passes. Thank you so much. And I'm going to do a quick detour and thank Giuliano for being here. This is his first meeting back, so thank you for agreeing to participate in this. We appreciate you being here. So next is item 3, comments for items not on the agenda. And the first is 3.1, public comment. And let me look at the chat. It doesn't look like anybody would like to speak to 3.1. But if there's anybody out there who's just joining us and you'd like to speak to something not on the agenda, please let me know right now. Okay, hearing nothing. Excuse me. We'll move on to 3.2, student voice. Are there any students here who would like to speak? Okay, I assume that means there's no one here for student voice. So we will.
Sonia, just so you know, I know a number of students who did want to come, but they are preparing for the concert across the street this evening.
Oh.
So there is a band and chorus show in the auditorium. So I know a number of those kids are over there now.
Well, that's a really good reason to not be here. So
Indeed.
I wish I could be enjoying that. It's always been a great event. So thank you for that. Okay. So with that, we'll move on to item 4, consent agenda. The only item is the meeting minutes from December 16th, and I would look for a motion to approve those minutes and the consent agenda. Sarah with a first. Anyone like to second? Chris Parker with a second. Any questions? Comments? Okay. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Alice, Guy, Sarah, Giuliano.
Aye.
Thank you, Tim, Chris Parker, Gina, Renee. Okay, so those are approved, and we will move on. Next is current business. And we have item 5.1 is new hires. And Chris, I don't think there's anything in our packet for new hires.
We have no new hires, and I do have a couple resignations to share with you in the superintendent report.
Okay. So no new hires. That's a first for a few meetings. We'll move on to 5.2, Winooski Valley Choice Approval. And you do have a document in your packet. Chris, would you like to speak to this?
Just pulling it up here. Yes, this is just a school choice public high school collaborative with all the schools in the Winooski Valley region. So we're just looking to make sure that we keep this in place, and just want to make sure the board is aware of it. So we don't anticipate any big changes to it this year.
So this is just a Winooski Valley school choice approval, and we have to take action on this and approve that our high school will agree to accept no more than 20 students and will send no more than 40 students for the 2022-2023 school year. I would look for a motion to approve this school choice form. Sorry. Gina, thank you. Tim, thank you. Gina with a first, Tim with a second. I realize I can't see your thumbs when I'm looking down. Are there any questions? Guy? Guy, you're on mute.
Sorry, folks. I'm going to try to be consistent in however many years I've been on the board. I have never voted for this for the very reason that it doesn't make sense to me that we would want to send out 40 students, and not necessarily saying we're going to send out 40 students and only take in 20. And I think, while it may make financial sense because the money does not follow the student, So yeah, if we're going to send out 40, we're still getting money for 40. And if we're going to take 20, then, obviously it works its way out. I've just never supported that. And I won't again tonight. My rationalization is probably not correct, but, it was the state's way of trying to satisfy the school choice thing. And I think they didn't do a good job doing it, but so I'm going to try to be consistent. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you, Guy. Chris Parker.
Yeah, in the document that has the state statutes about this, I have a question about item J, transportation. It says the superintendent of each supervisory union shall establish and update a statewide clearinghouse, providing information to students about transportation options among the districts. What is that? What is a clearinghouse that gives options for transportation?
Sorry, the phone is ringing behind me here. I'm sorry if that's annoying. It should stop in a second. A couple things. A couple things that I will get that call. To Guy's point, I think it is not the door. No, I'm standing right by it. But to Guy's point, I know that at least in the last couple of years, we have not even approached those numbers, just so we know. And I can speak to the benefits of these transfers for kids who are, I can think of one particular case that I worked with the Washington Central District on, where it was really a mutually beneficial switch for both kids, where having that choice and option really benefited the families and the kids and the school communities. So it really can be a positive, and that's why I support it. In terms of the transportation piece, Chris, this is a question that's come up in the Winooski Valley superintendent's group. There's a lot of questions about how transportation works for this. An example that I can give you where it doesn't work is that we have some students coming to Spalding from Chelsea, from the Chelsea area, where we've had great struggles getting transportation over there right now with all the staffing shortages. So, we want it to work for those families, but we've got to figure out a way to do it practically. So I'm working with that superintendent. We're working with each other. So there's still some things to work out with that, just so you know. And it's not just us where this is a problem.
So if a student chooses a high school outside of the district is responsible for transporting that student to that farther away school?
That is right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big issue when we have busing shortages right here within the 05641.
It's really been exacerbated this year, and to the point where we've really got to revisit it. And the good news is that we're all on the same page about this to try to make sure it makes more sense for everybody. But we're having trouble finding drivers. I mean, we don't use a bus for that. We use one of the Suburbans that we lease from STA, but it's it's just some things that we're going to have to clean up for sure. So,
Chris, I think we provide transportation for Chelsea, but I don't think we've had to provide transportation. It was an agreement that we had with that we started when Chelsea decided to go to school choice, but I don't think it has been we're not required to provide transportation. I know they're
right.
So what you just said sounded like we had to provide it.
No, it's what we've been doing. So it's just we've got to figure this out so that it works.
Correct.
It makes sense.
Okay. Andrea?
Well, I just want to clarify, the Chelsea students is not part of the Winooski Valley agreement. Those are sending schools, which is different from, because they don't have a high school.
Right.
So it's not part of Winooski Valley.
Oh, that's right. Forgive me. But there are discussions about this within the Winooski Valley group, just so we know. That was my mistake. Excuse me.
Okay. So are there any more questions about the agreement to join the Winooski Valley and statewide choice of public high school collaborative for the 22-23 school year? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Alice. Guy, I'm going to come back to you. Sarah. Giuliano.
Aye.
Tim. Yes. Chris Parker? Yes. Gina? Yes. Renee? Yes. Guy, you are a no. Okay. All right. The agreement is approved and we will move on. Next up is 5.3, and that is the ratification of the teacher collective bargaining agreement. And
Sonia, before you go on, I need to confirm whether or not you voted because I have to put a vote count in it because there's a no.
oh yeah, no, we voted. It was
No, the question is, did you
Oh, me?
vote? Yes.
Oh no, I don't usually vote.
Okay, but sometimes you do. That's why whenever there's a count, I have to say, is it 8-1, 7-1, etc. So I will put that it's 7-1, and that you did not vote.
Correct. I don't usually vote, so thank you for asking. Okay, next is 5.3, and I actually, Chris, do you want to present on this, or Gina, or should I present on this? We didn't actually discuss who would be presenting this.
I know that I I'm not prepared to present it, but I certainly.
You would. Well, I guess I can present it. Or Gina, would you feel
The reason I'd be reluctant is I came into the process very late. So, but I would be happy to.
I'm going to put Gina on the spot
I
because
can present it. I'm also not prepared, but I do consider myself a master of fake it till you make it. So let's go. We, after a very arduous process, reached a tentative agreement pending board ratification with the association. You have the details there. I'd prefer not to get too deep into things like the family teacher conferences, although I'm happy to answer those questions directly if people have them. I just am not prepared to get that into it right now. But a lot of what you see here, for example, in Article 12, insurance, a lot of what you see there is just streamlining our contract for the statewide bargaining agreement. So it looks like a huge change, and but it's really just making sure that the agreement is aligned with that contract, because that contract, of course, governs the terms of insurance. The main article that most people are interested in is compensation. And you will see that we settled a 2-year contract. So we have a little break from doing this again. In year 1, we've got 3.75% new money, and then year 2, 3.9% new money. That does not equate to a linear increase for all teachers. It's based on a very complicated salary table that, again, I'm not prepared to speak to. But we settled that, which is fairly in line with comps in the area. And also, I think we got the message that teachers wanted a little bit of a longer contract to feel a little bit, to help kind of offset some of the stress and whatnot of the past year. So the other item that was significant, I'm just looking at the tuition reimbursement. And that we've got excuse me, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. We specified some graduate level requirements in that section that hadn't been in there before, with some exceptions to be made on a case-by-case basis. And there was a little change in bereavement leave in terms of changing the definition of close family. So all in all, we're pretty happy with where we ended up, and I apologize for being less prepared. I'm happy to try to answer specific questions if people have them.
Thanks, Gina. Any questions? Okay. Chris Parker?
Just one minor question sorry, Gina, about the conferences. The question being just around the naming. I see that it was changed from parent to family, but I wonder if there was any talk about just using guardian or caregiver, just because not all kids are living with family per se, that would come to a conference or that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Chris. and without getting too far into the weeds on it, we spent quite a bit of time, not quite a bit of time, but there were several changes that were made in an attempt to make the language more inclusive. So a lot of the agreement that you're seeing here, there's some broad language changes. It's not called a master agreement anymore. It's called like a collective bargaining agreement. So I would say the consideration of those language details was there. But I think that that's a good point, and that's something that we can take into the next round when we're continuing to clean up the language. So much time is spent cleaning things up, especially with the merging of the districts, that even now, a couple of years later, we're still finding things that, say the school versus the district and so on and so forth. So I will say that there was pretty careful consideration on language.
Are you all set, Chris? Yeah. Okay. All right. So seeing no one else with hands up, is there someone who'd like to make a motion to ratify the teacher collective bargaining agreement as presented?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Guy. So first from Sarah and a second from Guy. Any other questions or comments? Guy?
Yeah, just I just want to commend the negotiation teams on both sides. Given the times, given what's going on, given inflation, I think this is a very reasonable deal. And what I'm not caught off guard, but I just read an article not too long ago where UVM Medical was trying to negotiate with nurses at an immediate 10% increase and a 6-month 5% increase following that. I don't want to compare the two jobs because both jobs are really difficult, but I know from doing a little bit of reading that nurses certainly make more than teachers, and so I think it's a fair deal, and I commend the folks on both sides for coming up with an agreement.
Thanks, Guy. Tim, you had your hand raised, but then you put it down. Are you all set? Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll call. Alice? Thank you. Guy? Yes. Sarah? Yes. Giuliano?
Aye.
Tim? Tim's no. Chris? Yes. Gina? Yes. Renee? Yes. Okay, so the collective bargaining agreement is ratified, and I believe the teachers have already ratified. So that means with our ratification that it is official. So thank you, everybody. Okay, moving on to the next item. 5.4, announced tuition approval. You have a document in your packet. And Chris, I'm hoping you can walk us through this because I'm really not sure what this is.
So this is just an announced tuition data entry form that we have to sign. It's a compliance piece. If you look at it, it basically, we just have to announce the prior year tuition. And there it's outlined right on there for kindergarten, elementary, secondary, in the tech center. And I simply sign that along with Lisa, and we just need it approved by you folks.
And you mean for next year, FY23?
FY23. This is for FY23.
Okay. And Alice, go ahead.
Could you just explain who qualifies for tuition? What students qualify for tuition?
Lisa, would you have a better handle on that? Are you able to answer that question?
Sure.
I have a general idea, but I bet you could answer it more specifically.
Good evening, everybody. So this is for secondary and elementary school tuition. And by statute, we're obligated to announce this to our sending schools. So this is to our sending schools who perhaps our school choice. So for example, we have Orange students and other schools in the area. So we send this to all of our sending schools, and also let the Agency of Education know that our board has approved these announced tuition rates.
Thanks, Lisa. Alice, does that answer your question?
I just wanted to kind of be sure that if, for example, an out-of-state student wanted to come to the Barry School District, someone other than a school district would have to pay their tuition, and that would be the amount they would pay.
That's correct. Yep.
And I would even, wager money that it's maybe not even an out of state. If someone, let's say, lived in East Montpelier and they really wanted to come to Spalding, then they could pay the tuition as announced here and not have to go through school choice or anything like that. They could just pay tuition and attend.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Andrea?
Yeah, I just had a question for clarification, because generally in the past, when we have the motion, we do say the tuition rates as proposed. And in the past, the categories have been K through 6, one rate, 7 through 12, another rate, CBCC, a separate rate. But in this year's document, it lists a kindergarten rate, an elementary rate, but no middle school rate, and then a secondary rate.
Yep.
So is the elementary rate K through 7 or 8?
Yeah, this is a different form because everything is electronic now. So they've created a different form, but this, the K through 6 is the $15,645. That's considered elementary. And then grades 7 through 12 are the secondary, and that's $16,082.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted clarification on the grades. Thanks.
And our tech center is $17,361, slightly less than last year's announced tuition.
Okay, great. So I would look for a motion to approve the announced tuition as presented. Alice? With a first, anyone with a second? Gina? Perfect, thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, let's go through the roll call. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Alice, yes. Guy, yes. Sarah, yes. Giuliano?
Aye.
Tim, yes. Chris, yes. Gina, yes. Renee, yes. Perfect. So that is approved. And we will move on to 5.5. So this is the FY23 BUUSD CVCC budget and warning approval. And so there is usually a couple of parts to this. The first is that we have to approve the budget. And then the second part is we have to approve the warnings, the budget and then the warnings. So, even though we're talking about the warning and that's what's on here, we have to approve the budget before we approve the warning for obvious reasons. So I will let Lisa and or Chris, do you guys want to present the budget? The first few items in your packet are the warnings, and maybe you can explain why we have multiple ones, and then we'll go through the BUUSD first, and then we'll have Jody go through CVCC, and we'll take that separately. Okay?
Okay. So there are 2 warnings in your packet, and at the Finance Committee meeting last week, I think it was, we decided to give you 2 choices. One, and if you go to your comparative tax rate calculation worksheets in your packet, it might help you to walk through what we were thinking in terms of the article specifically around the budget. So one of the articles speaks to using 600,000 of your tax stabilization funds as toward your revenue. And the other article, option 2, is using 700,000 of tax stabilization toward revenue. And what that really means in terms of the percentage of an increase on your per pupil spending, because remember the article has 3 different things: your total expenses, your per pupil spending, and the percentage that's either higher or lower than the previous year. So in Article 1, you're going to see the expenses are the same. However, what changes is the per pupil spending and the percentage. So your first option, using 600,000, gives you a per pupil spending of $16,595, which is 8.22% higher than this current year. Using the 700 toward your revenue puts you at a per pupil spending of 16,551, or 7.93% increase. So while these numbers, these increases, percentage increases look high, and they are higher than we're typically sharing, it's really because the per pupil or the equalized pupil count was affected by, last year we were held harmless. This year we're taking the impact of 2 years of the equalized pupil. So it's an increase. So the equalized pupil decreased 125 students, and that's a weighted number. So it technically is somewhere around 100 students. So that's really why you're seeing that increase in your per pupil number.
Lisa, before Gina asks her question, can I just, for a clarifying point, it's important to note that this does not mean that there's an 8% tax increase. The tax increase is significantly lower than that, but this is what we have to have on the ballot, right? And it's just important that the community understands that.
Right. And so if you're looking at your comparative tax rate calculation worksheets, you can see that while, yes, there's a higher percentage in the article, your per pupil, your tax rate actually in Berry City will go down 4 cents using the 600,000 of your tax stabilization, and it will increase only 1 cent in Berry Town. And using the 700 toward revenue, again, it's 4 cents, a reduction of 4 cents in your Berry City tax rate and a 0 increase in Berry Town. So these tax rates are based on a yield that the tax commissioner announces on December 1st. And because I'm always conservative with our numbers, I use the yield that did not include any of the unallocated. If you remember hearing in the news, the education fund has $90 million that if some of that money, or if all of that $90 million were to be put toward tax relief for the Vermont communities, your property yield would be $13,846 as opposed to the $12,937 that we're using in this. And if the legislature decides to use the $90 million, then Berry City would see a decrease of 13 cents in their tax rate, and Berry Town would see a decrease of 7 cents in their tax rate. So I think that, you know, we really need to look at, I think that when we heard from the community during the listening sessions, we heard that we need to, that this budget should, you know, really take into consideration our taxpayers. And I think we also heard that we really need to take into consideration our students and our staff. And I think that that's what this budget does. And so in the worst case scenario, you're pretty much either level funding or reducing the tax rate minimally in Berry City. And that's the worst case scenario, really.
Thanks, Lisa.
Before you go on, could I just ask a couple of questions about what you've said? Is that allowed, Sonia?
Yeah, I also have Josh Howard would like to speak on this. So I think it may be best to let Josh speak first, and then we'll open up to the board questions if you're okay with that, Gina.
Should I put my hand back up?
Sure, that would be a good reminder for me. Thanks. Josh Howard, would you like to speak?
Sure. So regarding this budget, I know we like to compare it to other schools quite a bit, especially with the equalized pupil spending. But I'm glad for punishment, so I sat through some other school board meetings for other districts, and I found that our 6.6% increase outweighs everyone else's around us. Washington Central, Montpelier, Roxbury. Our actual spending per student in this district is, when you take the actual budget you're proposing, divided by the 2,200 students that you have, it's $24,200 per head. When you take that figure, you compare to other districts in the same exact manner, we're paying way more than everyone else around us. 6.6% increase with a minimal tax rate difference this year, but the CLAs are dropping fast, means that we're going to be paying for it pretty hard pretty soon. This time next year is going to be some draconian cuts. I think the Berry City and Berry Town voters, we can't afford this anymore. It's been a rough year. It's only going to get rougher. To ask more money constantly without even having a single discussion as far as what does it look like we cut spending, kind of keep spending the same, so on and so forth. I mean, I ask them, but the board ignores them. There's no objectivity to it. It can kind of be shown by this time last year when Gina Ackley and you too, as Sonia, both agreed and outwardly said in a board meeting that we wish the budget was higher, wish the increase was bigger. You vote for the budget no matter what. It kind of tells us all that there is no objectivity to it. The discussions need to happen. We have a dwindling student population, but yet an increasing employment costs and increasing budget constantly. I think the residents here, we all need a break. We just need a break. And I urge everyone there to just, take the budget off the table, look at it again, ask those objective questions, and see where you get to.
Okay, thanks, Josh.
Sonia, could I just clarify? Josh was talking about the 6.6% increase, and that is from last year's total expenses to this year's total expenses. And what I think it's important to keep in mind is that we received millions of dollars in federal funds, and so we have to account for that in these total overall expenses. So it's not apples to apples, because we took our general fund and we added $6 million in grant funding. That gets backed out in your revenue. So what I think is important to understand is that we have a 1.95% increase in our general fund. And that is the only number that is impacted by tax rate. So the tax rate is impacted by your general fund, not the.
We cannot guarantee $6 million next year, Lisa. It's just not a thing. Federal grants going from $3 million to $6 million. We can't count on that. Plain and simple. That goes away. We're all screwed.
Josh, sorry, you had your chance to speak. Lisa's giving.
I had a clock. It's still 2 minutes.
No. So thank you, Lisa, for that explanation. I think this is a perfect illustration of why this is complicated and really hard to understand. And it is, there are lots of moving parts. And so I can go into my, get on my soapbox in a minute, but Gina, we'll let you go ahead.
Okay. My last name is pronounced Akeley. I did definitely say that I think we should spend more money on schools. I did not say I think that we should make taxpayers pay more money for schools. My intention when I say I don't think we can spend enough on education is that I prioritize education over other expenses. And if someone said, hey, guess what? You get to spend $50,000 per student, I think that would be fantastic. And I wouldn't say no. Lisa, my question about what you were saying, I just going back to equalized pupils, because I still, it took me a while to kind of understand equalized pupils. The equalized pupil count, A, is out of our control, correct?
Correct.
And B is affected by things like demographics, kids moving from grade to grade. So certain grades are considered more expensive than others. If a kid went from the traditional educational track into one of the alternative programs or went onto an IEP, that would affect it, correct?
Yes.
So right now, what we're seeing with that, it doesn't look dramatic on paper really in terms of change in equalized pupils, but I can see how it changes the math pretty significantly. You're looking at 2 years of sort of all of those little micro changes that have changed the demographics enough. And now the state is looking at our actual demographics and saying, okay, based on that, this is your equalized pupils, because that's the best way we have of sort of standardizing how we're counting students across the state, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then my second question was going to be, and I think that you answered it with in response to Josh, but I got a little distracted. Sorry. That the increase on the ballot is going to be the either 7% or the 8%, depending on what we decide tonight. But the actual increase in the budget is under 2% as it stands right now.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Alice?
Yes, I just had a question after attending the last finance committee meeting. There was a page and a half of amendments that were added. And I wonder if, how did those items come to pass? What was the rationale for putting those, what appeared to be, some significant staffing, additional monies for field trips, for things like that? How did those come about? Was that just an arbitrary decision, or where did they come from? All those things that were on that page and a half of amendments.
So the budget development process starts in as soon as like September. And we share in August a budget development calendar or schedule. And throughout September and October and even into November, we're meeting with the administrators. So Chris and I had meetings, and throughout that period of time, we're looking at their budgets. They're determining whether they want to make additions or deletions. There's very little additions to this budget. So, and actually it is in your packet, the information that you're talking about from the finance committee, that is in your packet as well.
If I could just add,
I'm particularly concerned about the staffing issues. We're adding a $75,000 interventionist. There's the potential for 10 paraprofessionals along. That concerns me because, again, what is the rationale for that? If we have a reduction in staff, a reduction rather in students, why are we increasing staff? Those are questions that came to me from folks who are not directly involved and have not been directly involved with the schools, but they run businesses, they hire people, that kind of thing, and they're wondering where that came from.
I might be able to.
On behalf of them.
Yeah, I might be able to answer to those two specific pieces, Alice. First, throughout the fall, the process evolves as we're developing these budgets with the principals and the schools. And the way this fall semester went down is, as we all know, there were lots of moving targets and lots of staffing holes, causing us to reassess how we are using people. And in the case of the interventionists at Barrytown, that's a position that they have been missing for a long time that we really feel needs to be in place. The paraeducators right now is a bit of a moving target, but where that is coming from is with the goal of increasing enrollment at the C program to make sure we can have 7th and 8th graders be up at that program. For that to happen, we are going to need support staff up there. So this is a way in which we feel we can keep more of the kids in the community and make sure we have more options for our 7th and 8th graders. So those are just 2 examples of where those come up. But really, I think to Lisa's point, there aren't many increases here. It's just there are a lot of moving targets for us, and we were trying to be as responsible as possible while planning this out. But all of those are to meet the needs of kids who are very vulnerable right now. And a lot more of that stuff's going to be taken care of through the ESSER grant and some of our goals through that too. So just so you know, that's where those came from.
And just one last point on behalf of myself. When we do the budget, is that linked with the strategic plan? And is there evidence to show that here's this expenditure and this is how it goes with the strategic plan, how this goes with the recovery plan? And if so, where is it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say to that, the strategic plan was just put in place late this spring. So we're still learning to work with that within our process. But if you were to look at every one of those 5 indicators, those 5 major indicators of our strategic plan, they're right in line with all the decisions we're making. Now, if you're asking, do we have exact direct links in any of the documentation? Currently, we don't, but we can do that. But we do discuss the strategic plan and all our thinking with this, just so you know.
Okay, looks like Alice, you're all set. Okay, Chris Parker.
Thanks. Is the difference between these 2 warnings the amount in the Article 4, Lisa? Is that what you said? The 600,000 versus 700,000?
No.
Yes.
No, it's not in Article 4. It's Article 4 is using to transfer surplus money. It's in Article 2.
It's in what?
Article 2. It doesn't reference the 600,000. If you look at the amount of per pupil spending in Article 2 from each of those different warnings, one is 16,595,
right,
and one's 16,551.
Okay, so there's nothing between these 2 papers that, or these 2 sheets that says why one is 8.22 and one 7.93. It's not. There's no indicator on there of why we have one versus the other.
No, and you actually have illustrated the point, which is when we bring a warning of our budget vote, it's the expense budget only. It doesn't show offsetting revenue. So it's sort of baked into it, but it doesn't explain, oh yeah, and we have this offsetting revenue. This is what our per pupil spending is. This is how much our equalized per pupil spending is.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Sarah?
I just want to make a couple comments. Just speaking about what you just said about the warning, I think that is, it's a key problem. Unfortunately, we don't have the option of changing the way it's presented on the ballot. It's written as we have to in statute, which does it for people who are not as involved with the budget process, for community members who don't have the time or the desire to learn about it. They're only reading that one portion. So I understand how it can seem alarming to some. Also speaking to what Alice had said, I just want to make sure that it's very clear. It's not, Lisa and Chris in the business office making decisions about adding staff. They reach out to the administrators and special educators in all the schools and get their input. So it's really coming from the direct schools about what it is that they need in order to educate our children. And then lastly, because we mentioned adding paraeducators in particular to the C program, currently that program is operating for our high school students. And we've done an analysis at the finance level and determined that, we are actually saving money by creating that program instead of sending out our students to other sources. So while it may seem like we're looking at adding a lot of paraeducators next year, we're hoping that, that those costs may be offset by not having to send, 7th and 8th graders out to other alternatives. As, like we said, we've been saving money on the other students.
Thanks, Sarah. Tim?
So one of the many complaints I've received this week was one about adding all kinds of crazy stuff back to the budget. I can't figure out what was added and what was not added. Did we add paying for teachers to go to teacher conferences again?
We just ratified the contract. Is that what you're talking about?
No, that slush fund of money that they get for education is there. But we didn't put anything else in the school budget that says we're going to pay for them to drive to teachers' conferences and house them there, did we?
You mean parent-teacher conferences, or to go to when they're going to
Go
go
to
get
teacher those boondoggles they go on.
Oh, to go to like learn about
Yeah.
different initiatives or
Yeah.
trauma-informed things. I'm sure that there are travel and conference included in our budget. To be honest, I'm not sure how much of that is happening.
It's part of the negotiated agreement. Professional development and course reimbursement.
Yeah. So have we seen the return on investment from educating these teachers so much? By the law of nature, we should be seeing the education that the teachers get trickle down at least somewhat to our students. Have we evaluated our students in the last 4 or 5 years?
Well, do you mean by like, have we given them assessments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To see that they're doing, and I think the last thing that I saw was they were doing much worse. True.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering if that's money well spent. It doesn't seem like it's got a good return on investment.
So your suggestion is to renegotiate that?
Well, I don't know. I just know that you guys must be the most interesting people in the world to shop with. When I don't typically buy things that don't work real often, but it seems like this is not working. And so this is why the budget becomes such a frustration.
Okay. Well,
I know you don't care. All right, I'm good.
I do care, Tim, but I'm concerned about what we're talking about the budget, and we're not, and I think you're concerned about the money that we're spending on conferences. And I think investing in our teachers, who is a direct relation to, providing a quality education for our students, it seems like without one, you can't have the other. And so I'm not sure that would be a wise move to just cut professional development and have stagnation in our, and I'm not sure anyone would actually want to come and work for us for that matter. So I think we have to be competitive, and we have to take those things into account. So I recognize that, there's different people think about things in different ways, but I think we also, Josh Howard brought up the fact that we compare ourselves to other districts, and in some ways we have to, because we have to take into consideration that we're competing with all, surrounding districts in Chittenden County for the same teachers, and we need to be competitive in our salary and in our benefits, in our professional development. So, and not to mention do what's best for our students. So, on that little side note, we're going to get back to the conversation about the budget. Are there any other questions about the budget, Guy? Guy, you might be talking.
Oh my God, sorry. I'm back. Just a couple comments. First of all, I think people get a little frustrated by the whole budget process, and I understand that because it is very complicated. One of the things I look at is student count. I think people are taking a look at that. If I'm reading the report correctly tonight, we have roughly 100 students in home study. Is that correct, Chris, or plus or minus?
Yeah, that number has been increasing during the pandemic, Guy, for sure. And one of the things we want to do is we also want to be, in addition to being competitive to attracting teachers, we've got to be attractive to got to be competitive in attracting families to come here as well. I think some families at the last listening session spoke to that they want to be here. They're encouraging their friends to move here with their young families. That's going to make this a healthier community. So that's why, that's where we're coming from too. It's important to attract great staff, but also we got to get families coming here too.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make that a huge issue. The point I'm trying to make is, while you're always concerned about a reduction in student population, you're taking a look at roughly 100 kids or so in a 2,000 plus educational population. So that's not like, automatically, we've had this discussion in the past. That's why we have class size, policies. And, the thing is we're trying to predict what life is going to look like in September of next year by using these figures, which I have to say in the last 2 years have been a little unusual, so I just want to put that in perspective. And, I certainly trust the staff to say, if all of a sudden, we had a huge migration from a particular class or two, we have policies to deal with that. And I believe the administration would deal with that. The other thing I want to throw out there is that, there is legislation right now that, in terms of the weighted students, and I don't know where, if and when they're going to pass that, but, I believe that we as a community would probably end up benefiting from that. And so if it passed tomorrow, which I don't think it will, but if it did, you're probably yet going to see another surplus if everything were equal. So I just want to put that in perspective. And it's really difficult. You kind of wish you had all the information right now, but you don't. And this is the best guess effort based on what's been performing. And I got to tell you, if you guys can predict what has happened in the last 2 years for next year, God bless you. I mean, that is very complicated.
Thanks, Guy. Okay, so just to be clear, I want to address a couple of things that have come up, and I want the comparative tax rate calculation sheet is very confusing, and the warning on the article on the warning that you're going to see on your ballot, it's not confusing. It's very clear, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And so the comparative tax rate calculation tells more of the story, but it still isn't a finalized story because, as Lisa said, if the legislature decides when they finalize the yield in May or June or whenever they finalize that, that it's going to be higher or lower, that will impact your tax rate. And that has happened to us in the past. We approve a budget and then they monkey around with the yield and it impacts what our projection was. And so we do our best, and Lisa always is very conservative. And so while the expense budget is the math is 6.62%, and the equalized, the per pupil spending is up 8.22% or 7.93%, depending on how much of the tax stabilization funds we use. The reality is, as Lisa pointed out, that our total increase in our budget and how much we're asking to spend over last year is 1.95%. And the most important thing to take into consideration is how, I think what people really want to know is, how is this going to impact my bottom line? How is this going to impact my home budget? And the homestead tax rate for Berry City is projected to go down by 4 cents in either scenario. And the tax rate in Berry Town is projected to either increase by 1 cent or to be held at 0. So I think that's important. I mean, all those other numbers are facts, and this is what we are projecting your tax rate will be, which actually impacts how much money you have to pay to for the education fund. So with that, Renee.
I apologize. I am not a master at this stuff. I'm a little bit confused in looking at the two warnings. And Lisa, I hope that you can help me understand it. When you explained it, it made perfect sense. But as I'm reading over it and looking at the comparisons, I don't understand it. Because in looking at the warning that's on page 24, it looks like to me all the numbers are the same except for the percentage, which is 7.93. And then on the other one, the numbers look all the same to me except 8.22. But I thought when you explained it that one of them said 700,000 and one was 600,000 to transfer to the fund balance.
Lisa, do you want to answer that?
Sure. So Renee, the one that has the per pupil spending of 16,595, which is a 8.22% increase higher, that's using 600,000 as toward revenue. The other warning is different in that the per pupil spending using 700,000 is 16,551 or 7.93%. So it's the per pupil is different in the percentage on both warnings. Does that make sense?
So the revenue isn't anywhere on the budget for voting.
Right. Yes, that's why it's a little bit confusing. Okay. And really the comparative tax calculation form, even though it is complicated and there's a lot of numbers, if you look at the FY23 column, that will give you sort of an idea of where we're coming from and where these numbers come from.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is the budget as presented. And I don't know if you have more questions, if anyone would like to make a motion to approve this budget, if anybody would like to have a discussion about using the $600 versus the $700,000 in revenue. Sarah?
I kind of just wanted to give a little background as to why the Finance Committee suggested we bring both to the full board. We understand it's going to be, to the people who don't pay attention to these meetings, who don't look at the tax comparative sheets, who only show up at the ballot box to vote, they're going to see this number. And, if you see 8%, that's pretty jolting. So our aim between our next Finance Committee meeting and hopefully within communications is to be able to do a lot of educating around the public and letting them know, what this is actually going to mean for them, what these numbers mean for them personally. We brought both suggestions to the full board to let the board decide kind of, how much from our tax stabilization fund do we want to put. Right now, with everything, the fund balance is going to stand around 900,000. So are we asking for 600? Are we asking for 700? For some people who will not see the materials that we're going to put out, who miss it, I think the idea kind of was, is it better for them to, all educating aside, is it better for them to see a number as an 8 in front of it or a 7? So, a little kind of psychology there, $3.99 looks better than $4. But so that's kind of where we were coming from in bringing both to the board. I understand sometimes it seems like minutia, but we wanted to get more opinions on it.
Thanks, Sarah. Gina?
I would like to advocate for using the 700,000 from the tax stabilization fund. I'm on the finance committee, so I'm repeating myself, but I agree with the logic that there is something about seeing a 7 versus an 8. I also think that we've received a lot of feedback during our listening sessions, and we've heard people say that they want us to give money back because we have a surplus. And we know we don't, our only mechanism for doing anything like that is using the tax stabilization fund to offset the potential tax increase for voters, hence the name tax stabilization. And so I feel like we can, in some ways interpret that feedback as asking us to do that in a way that seems reasonable.
Thanks, Gina. Guy?
Gina, if that's a motion, I'd be more than happy to second it.
I will make it a motion.
So,
and I will second that.
So Andrea's going to take us to task if we don't get this right. It sounds like, Gina, you're making a motion to approve the warning, to approve the school board to expend $53,254,319, which will result in education spending of $16,551 per equalized pupil, with projected spending per equalized pupil at 7.93% higher than spending for the current year.
That is the motion I am making.
Unless Andrea tells me I'm wrong. Go ahead, Andrea.
Well, you're putting the cart before the horse, because you have to approve the budget before you approve the warning.
But the budget is 53.
You haven't approved that yet.
Right. But the budget is, we're trying to decide, we're approving the budget. I guess we have to approve the budget at 53,254,319 first. That's what you're saying?
Right. So you approve your budget and then you approve the warning. I mean, if you're coming to a consensus right now and polling and having a discussion, that's fine. But as far as actually approving the warning will be after the budget is approved. Because if something happens right now and someone determines, no, I want to lower that budget, then you've already approved a warning with the incorrect amount.
Right. And to be clear, the warning is the entire sheet. So we have to discuss everything on that entire sheet. We have to go through, we have to understand, we have to understand all of the different articles before we approve the warning, because it's not just the budget warning article. It's not just Article 2. There's other articles there. And one of those is the Career Center budget. So I guess I'm going to backtrack, Gina, and ask if you'd like to amend your motion to approve the budget to expend $53,254,319.
I would like to do that.
And Guy, are you okay with that?
And I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments, discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of that, please signify with a thumbs up. Alice?
Come back to me.
Okay. Guy? Yes. Sarah? Yes. Giuliano?
Aye.
Yes. Tim is a no. Chris Parker? Yes. Gina? Yes. Renee? Yes. Alice?
Yes, I would vote in favor of that.
Okay. So the budget passes, and I think we'll have to put a pause on the other conversation. Well, I guess we can decide whether we want to do or maybe we should wait. Let's have a conversation about CVCC, because we have to get that budget approved as well. Andrea? Oh, I thought she was going to chime in.
I said, no, correct. You have to approve the CVCC budget next before you can approve the warning.
Right. Okay, so Jody, you are on, and we're going to have to flip through some pages because you're a little bit further in the packet.
That's okay. It looks like the one that made it into the packet is, in case we do get that governance vote, there's another version of this that's staying with the Barre Unified Union School District. Either way, the bottom line is $3,512,050.
So in your packet, there is a Central Vermont Career Center school district budget expenses, and it illustrates the proposed budget that Jody just presented. And on your warnings under Article 3, you can see that the voters of the school district approve the school board to expend $3,512,050. So, and that's the same on both warnings that we were looking at.
I think one thing that I noticed was missing in the narrative about the adjustments was that we do have some salary for teachers coming out of Perkins and into our local budget. So that is why it goes up a little bit. And that was missed in those.
Yes, I think that was a question that that was asked at the finance meeting. And I think it's specifically digital media arts, right?
Yes, digital media arts too.
Yeah.
Funding for that instructor is coming out of, a little bit of it is coming out of Perkins and into our local budget. And basically what Penny Chamberlain did when she was director was she would have someone that they can be in Perkins for 4 years. So every year she would shift a quarter of their salary into the local budget. So it wasn't such a hard hit at the end of 4 years and so I'm continuing to do that.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions about the CVCC budget? Okay, hearing none, would anyone like to make a motion to approve the CVCC budget at $3,512,050?
I'll make that motion, Guy.
Thanks, Guy. Alice, was that a second? Perfect, thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Alice, yes. Guy, yes. Sarah, yes. Giuliano?
Aye.
Yes. Tim, yes. Chris, yes. Gina, yes. Renee, yes. Okay, that passes. Thank you so much. All right, so now we have approved both budgets, and now we need to discuss the warnings. And this is where let's look at the warning. Well, because Gina was proposing the 700,000, let's look at the second warning, which is the warning that says that we would spend 16,000 under Article 2, $16,551 per equalized pupil, and the projected spending per equalized pupil is 7.93% higher. You'll notice that there is also Article 3 is the CVCC budget that we just approved, the warning for the taxpayers to approve that. And then Article 4 is Article 4 and Article 5 are, I'm going to let Sarah talk about those because this was discussed at the finance meeting.
Sure. So it was brought to the finance meeting, the suggestion, or, we had a kind of a proposed article to move what is left of our surplus funds into the capital improvement fund. We held, everybody knows, we've had multiple discussions surrounding our surplus funds. In the end, the finance committee suggested that it might be prudent to place 614,000 and change into, make sure I'm doing this right, the capital projects fund, and the other 600,000 into tax stabilization. Just as as Gina had mentioned, we've been hearing from the public. We've have a surplus. We'd like to get some of that money back. That gives us the opportunity to do that. Also noted, we had a suggested article come up that would basically give the board the permission each year to move any projected surplus into a fund that they deemed, and the finance committee had considered this, and we kind of thought that the public may not have an appetite for that at this time, so we removed that from the options. What we're doing here is we've heard from the public, they want to stay in the surplus funds, and while we would love to put a poll out there on a ballot saying, hey, where should we spend this money, we don't really have the option. As discussed earlier tonight, we have specific language as to what we're actually allowed to put on a ballot, and this is the best way we could go about that.
Thanks, Sarah. So are there any questions about that, about the Article 4 and Article 5 specifically from anyone?
Can I make one more comment? Sorry.
Absolutely.
So as I said, we're projecting, or we're putting out to the public, do you want to move 614,000 into capital projects? Do you want to move 600,000 into tax stabilization? So the voters will have a say yes or no whether or not that's what we do. If the vote goes down, the money stays in the general fund.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, any other questions? Any comments? Any other, Andrea?
Yeah, there's just a couple of maybe technicalities. Under Article 5, the second line, the audited fund balance should say as of June 30th.
Okay.
And then also in Article 5, we've never done this before, and I'm not sure why it's worded this way. The informational meeting will be held in the library at Spalding High School. We've never said and the Vermont Center Vermont Career Center, because the Career Center doesn't own the library. It's just the meeting is being held at Spalding High School in the library.
Okay.
And then I also have a question. Is there going to be a virtual option for this?
The informational meeting?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So that needs to be in the warning, I think.
Okay. Will be held in the library and virtually.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if we have to give a link in the warning. I don't know. We've never done this before.
Sonia, I can contact Tina tomorrow just to kind of run this by her, because this all got, we vetted this before we had it put out there. But I'll give her a call to ask about that. I think there's going to need to be a virtual option.
Well, so here's the problem. I appreciate that, but we have to approve this warning tonight.
Yeah. Or how about this, just to ask her about how we can do that.
Okay.
But I agree with you. I think we got to move.
Alice? You're on mute.
I think that using the larger amount is a very wise decision, but I still believe that from what I'm hearing from folks, this is going to be an uphill climb all the way. And while the warning is very general and it has to be that way, I think it really behooves us to be very specific and to cite the data points as to what balances on this budget, because otherwise it's not. I can just tell that it's not going to set well with the general public, and it really, if education is our business, how does this budget relate to what's happening with the students, where they're going, what they're doing, and why all of these things that were cut out of a budget are suddenly lumped back in? Because I'm sure there will be questions about that. And I really wish I could jump up and down and say hip hip hooray, but I just do believe it's going to be a baby steps uphill climb to get through this, and we need to be prepared to face that if it comes.
Okay, thanks, Alice. When you say that, I have a few questions, because I'm not sure what you mean by it's an uphill climb. Is it an uphill climb in trying to explain what we're doing? Is it an uphill climb to make sure we educate people that their tax rate is either going down or remaining the same?
It has nothing to do with tax rate.
Okay.
People don't think about their tax rate. What they see are big numbers and high percentages and things like that. That most people, when they're sitting down and analyzing it and saying, "Oh, well, this is going to take my rate down by 4 cents or up by 10 cents or whatever it might be," they're looking at those big numbers and they want to know how we're using that money to have our students be successful. And that is extremely important, to show those touchstone points. How are our reading levels doing? How is our math doing? How does that relate to the money we're spending? Those are the questions that people are going to be asking and talking among themselves. Now, we see people and we hear people who come to our meetings and ask questions of us. It's the ones that don't show up, but who are talking, that we need to really impress upon what it is that we're doing and how we're doing it and how we're using that money. And that's why I say it's an uphill climb, because we need to reach all those members of the community, all those business people, all those grandparents, all those non-grandparents, the total empty nesters that have nobody left in the district. How are we using taxpayers' monies to be successful with our students? And that, I think we need to really spend a lot of time and a lot of effort on making that perfectly clear, so that the general public can relate to the big numbers that they see and how that works out, how that on the ground.
Okay. I think that's a point well taken. And I think in our parking lot, we have assessment data, and I think that's coming up. I'm not sure. I think maybe February. I think it has to go to curriculum.
January 25th.
It's going to curriculum. And so there will be some more information about assessments and how our students are doing. So hopefully that will help to address the concern and the communication around that. So back to the warning. I'm not sure if we need to add a virtual option or how we need to say that, because we need to approve this tonight. I know that there have been a couple of suggestions that, we should just put the budget on hold and we should just push this off. But by statute, we're supposed to go to bring this to our voters on town meeting day. And so we have certain deadlines that we have to meet. And one of them is we have to approve this budget and have it to our city and town clerk so that it can be added to ballots by the end of the month. And so with that, we need to approve the budget so that we can move on. Andrea?
Well, you already approved the budget. So you could you could present that to the city council. You still have some wiggle room to shore up your warning.
We do. And I would say in a perfect world where there was no COVID and we are actually sitting at a table next to each other would be much easier. But getting 9 people to go to the central office to sign a warning can sometimes be like pulling teeth, unfortunately. So we have to have as much time as we possibly can, because every single school board member has to sign this warning for it to be official.
Could you do it if you are still holding your other special meeting next week? Could you add that at the beginning of the agenda to approve a warning?
I'd rather not. We could, and I guess I would leave it to the board. Renee, go ahead.
If it's simply just having a virtual option, I'm just wondering, Chris, you could probably answer this. Is there a reason why we can't just have a virtual option? I mean, we have all our meetings virtual. So is there a reason why it wouldn't be an option?
There isn't. So that was my question. I just thought we could actually get this passed through, and I can just simply reach out to Tina and just let her know, and Carol, make sure this is what we have to have this option. I don't think it should be too hard to do.
So what I think we should, go ahead, Gina.
I was going to ask, there are a couple other minor edits as well. Can we make note of the edits and have a motion to approve the warning with edits as discussed, and then make those edits after the fact?
We can approve the warning with edits because we're approving it, and then the edits can be made, and then we can all sign it. If we were all sitting at a table, that would be more difficult, because then we would be signing something that didn't have the edits on it, or maybe just handwritten in. So I think we can do that, and then the edits can be made, and then we can sign the official document that we agreed on. But the question is, what are the edits? So, Alice?
Look, I was just looking at it and saying, if we're going to drop and the Central Vermont Career Center out of that line, where we take out Central Vermont Career Center, could we just plug in and through a virtual option to be announced in there, so folks could know to go look for a virtual option?
Andrea?
Well, that seems to be the legal question, because normally a warning has to be very specific to tell people where and how they can attend a meeting. So I just don't know if you could approve a warning without giving the specific information. That's something that I think we need to seek some counsel on.
Well, what if we just say that we're going to, instead of saying through a virtual option, if we just say that we're going to, is further warned and notified that a hybrid informational meeting will be held in the library, and we just call it a hybrid? Can we get away with that? In this day and age, I think everyone, maybe not.
I mean, we can schedule a meeting right now and get a Google link. We could schedule a meeting and put an actual link in the warning for where people could join it.
We could do that. Sarah?
I'm wondering if we need to state that as long as someone shows up at the Spalding High School library, that is the option that's being presented. I don't see how it's wrong to say that.
Well, I guess because it's a warning. So there's the in-person, like when you look at our agenda, we have the in-person option and we have the virtual option. And then that's, the meeting is warned. And so this is sort of like a warning for that informational meeting. And so do we also, I think what Andrea's point is, we have the in-person option, and this is where you have to show up. But then where do you show up if you want to attend virtually?
Okay. What did it say last year?
That's a good question. I don't think we addressed it last year, to be honest.
I don't recall, and we did not hold any in person.
No, nothing was in person. Everything, but there was a state of emergency. So
right there, yeah, that's true. And there was a state of emergency, and I don't recall what was on the warning. But
I'm guessing it probably just said there would be a virtual meeting last year, is what I'm guessing.
I mean, you might be able to get an answer really quickly from Carol Dawes, say tomorrow. She might know. I don't know what the city council is doing, because if you have to make some, a few little corrections anyway, people aren't going to sign it till those corrections are made. So I would think it would be fairly simple to get an answer, hopefully, on how to announce the legal warning for the virtual portion.
Okay. So what I think we should do is, I'm going to just say that let's make, if someone could make the motion to approve the warning as presented with the edits of under Article 5, it will say audited fund balance as of June 30th, 2021 to the Capital Projects Fund. And the section underneath Article 5 that begins the legal voters and residents would say that an informational meeting will be held in the library at the Spalding High School and through a virtual option. In the library at Spalding High School in the city of Barre, and through a virtual option on Monday, February 28th, 2022. And we will pass that. Then we'll run it by Carol Dawes, and she will either give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and we will have the opportunity, if we have to approve it at our special meeting next week. Sarah?
So I just put it in the chat. The warning last year said the legal voters and residents of Barre Unified Union School District are further warned and notified that an informational meeting will be held via Google Meet on Monday, March 1st, 2021. So I think we just really need to stay in the school library and via Google Meet.
Okay, so then, thank you, Sarah. So this language, the language under Article 5 would say the legal voters and residents of the Barry Unified Union School District are further warned and notified that an informational meeting will be held in the library at the Spalding High School, at the Spalding High School in the city, at Spalding High School in the city of Barry, and via Google Meet on Monday, February 28th, 2022, blah, blah, blah. Okay?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thanks, Gina. And a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Guy. Are there any other questions about the articles? Article 1 obviously has the 4 members who are up for the seats that are up for election. 1 in Barry City for a term of 3 years, 1 in Barry City for 2 years, 1 in Barry Town for 3 years, 1 at large for 3 years. Article 2 is the budget for BUUSD that we just approved for the 53 million. And this particular article uses the 700,000 of revenue. So that gives you a 16,551 per equalized pupil. And the projected spending is 7.93% higher. It also has Article 3, which is a Central Vermont Career Center budget of $3,512.50. And then the Article 4 and Article 5 are the asking the voters if we should transfer the surplus, the remainder of the surplus funds, 600,000 to tax stabilization and 614,807 to the capital projects fund. Any questions about that? Anyone? Andrea.
I just want, for clarification purposes, if the mover and seconder would start the motion with that you're approving the warning with the per pupil, the per equalized pupil spending of 7.93% higher with the edits as discussed, something like that. So because you have 2 warnings that are both titled exactly the same, so we want to make it clear in the minutes which one was chosen.
Okay. Gina, are you okay with that? And Guy, you okay with that? Those, okay. Any other questions or comments? And just to be clear, if this isn't exactly right, we will have to do this again on next week when we meet again, and then we'll have to, I'm not even sure if that's been warned. That's a whole nother conversation. Okay, so nothing else. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Alice, yes. Guy, yes. Sarah, yes. Giuliano?
Aye.
Thank you. Tim, yes. Chris, yes. Gina, yes. Renee, yes. Okay, so the warning is approved. And now, thank you very much for that. Now we're going to move on to 5.6, which is for Jody to come back and tell us about the warning for CVCC. And we have an addendum. Should we be looking at or looking at the one that came in our packet?
The addendum is the one that's most accurate, but based on your discussion just barely, there's still something wrong with it. So we'll need to amend it slightly too. But basically, since the state board approved the governance report, and that allows us to move forward with votes on town meeting day regarding whether the Central Vermont Career Center should become a school district. And also at the same time, the at-large members of that board, should the district come to be, are also going to be elected. So in anticipation of that potentially happening, we need the board members to be in place as well. So there are 6 board members that would come from each of the sending school boards. So 1 person from this board would be on that board. And then there are 4 at-large people. So the warning has that. It basically, I've never written a warning until this year. And so it's a steep learning curve this year. I took the language from your warning and just added in the language that we needed to have approved, Article 1, regarding whether or not our voters approve of the Central Vermont Career Center becoming a school district, and then Article 2, voting for those at-large members. And then looking down, I noticed that we had the same exact language in that addendum and the previous draft also around the meeting in the library. And so that's not what we're doing. We're having a virtual forum on February 15th. That will be recorded for anyone who's not there. So I've sent an updated draft to Tina, Chris, and Sonia with that language in it, anticipating that you're going to need to make that change. So hopefully Tina can just print out the new version and you can go with it.
So Jody, to be clear, everything in Article 1 and Article 2 is correct. And then it's the portion under Article 2 that just needs to be changed?
Correct.
Okay, so we can make that correction now, just as we did with the warning we just did. And so there will be an informational meeting held in the library at Spalding High School in the Central Vermont Career Center in the city of Barrie but not Monday, February 28th.
It actually won't be there. So let me.
Okay, you said it's virtual. I'm sorry.
Right.
That an informational meeting will be held via Google Meets?
I just put the updated language in the chat, and it would be via Zoom.
Okay.
And I can add that link to a version for Tina so that that's there.
Okay, so the portion under the Article 2, below the line of tildes, is in the chat. So it says the legal voters and residents of Barrie Unified Union School District are further warned and notified that an informational meeting will be held virtually on Tuesday, February 15th at 6 p.m. for the purpose of explaining the articles to be voted on by Australian ballot. A recording of this forum will be placed on the CVCC website at cbtcc.org. Okay. Is that correct, Jody?
Yes.
Okay. Chris Parker?
There will not be an in-person option offered to folks.
The governance committee is presenting this. I could be here in person, but they will be the ones that are presenting, and they'll be presenting from wherever they are.
So I think Andrea's going to raise her hand and tell you have to have an in-person.
Yeah, I think in unless there is a state of emergency in effect or additional emergency legislation is passed, open meeting law requires that you do have at least one physical location.
Okay, then the physical location that we need to add is room 136 at CVCC.
Room 136 at CVCC.
Thank you for your patience with me as I learn this.
That's okay. It's complicated. Okay, so it would say the legal voters and residents of Barrie Unified Union School District are further warned and notified that an informational meeting will be held in room 136 at the Central Vermont Career Center in the city of Barrie and virtually on Tuesday, and maybe virtually via Zoom, on Tuesday, February 15th at 6 p.m. for the purpose of explaining the articles to be voted on and so on. So I think that basically mirrors what we just said or how we just changed ours. To reflect both an in-person and virtual option. Does any, I think probably more importantly, does everybody understand what this is? Does anybody have any questions about what this warning is about? We have discussed it more probably so than other places, but I've gotten some questions about it more recently, and I just want to make sure that the board is clear about what this warning is asking the voters. Yeah. Okay. So would anybody like to make a motion to approve the warning with the edits as indicated in this chat, and also with an addition of an in-person option.
I'll
So
make
moved.
a motion, Guy.
Thanks, Guy.
So,
Thanks, Chris.
as chat is not considered a legal part of the meeting, you just need to warn it to say that the amendment should spit it out here, Mrs. Poland. The motion should say that you're approving the warning as discussed and amended.
Okay.
And then someone should double, triple check the amended one before it gets put out for signature to everyone.
Okay. And Guy and Chris, are you okay with that amendment to the motion? Chris is okay. Guy is okay. All right. Any other questions or comments about the warning? No. Okay. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Alice, yes. Guy, yes. Sarah, yes. Giuliano?
Bye.
Tim, yes. Chris, yes. Gina, yes. Renee, yes. Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Jody. We will, if you, will you type up the final copy and then get it to Tina, and then she'll print it out for us to all sign it?
Already sent it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And just as with the previous warning, if there are any issues that Carol Dawes or anybody sees with that, we can come back to it next week if need be. Okay. And thank you for the handy little 10 reasons to vote for the creation of the Central Vermont Career Center School District. That was really nice. I like that.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Now we have 5.7, which is the FY23 annual meeting warning approval. So the annual meeting this is also going to need some amendment, because I think we're also going to have a virtual option as well. This is, as you can see on the warning, it's to elect a moderator, a clerk, and a treasurer. And it gives the amount that board members and board chair are paid. It allows voters to authorize the district to borrow money pending receipt of payments from the state education fund, to do business proper to come before said meeting. So this is why do we have, are we doing this by Australian ballot? I thought we were doing this. Oh no, we're doing this.
This is a floor vote.
Yeah. So this is, thank you. We went back and forth a few times. So now I'm trying to, this is an in-person meeting, and this will all happen in person on Monday, February 28th. There will be this annual meeting, and there will be the informational meeting the night before town meeting. So these are all of the things that will happen at that meeting, and anyone and everyone is welcome to attend. This is like our version of an in-person town meeting, maybe virtually, maybe in person. Okay, not our version, but our mini version. Okay, so are there any questions about this? I think we need to amend the first sentence. It says the legal voters of Barrie Unified Union School District are hereby warned to meet at the Spalding High School Library in the city of Barrie or via Google Meet on Monday, February 28th at 5:30 to act on the following articles. And then it spells out the articles. Oh, no. Andrea?
I'm sorry. Oh, no. I hear you. This one here, people are actually voting from the floor, and it's any registered voter. And I'm not sure, and normally nobody shows up. But if folks do, how are we going to determine that they are registered voters? Are we going to have a checklist? Are we going to, that? So I'm just wondering how that plays in.
That's a good question. And when I said, oh, no, it was because I was looking at the chat and not my queue, and I couldn't tell who was raising their hand. So it wasn't, oh, no to you. So just for some history here, we've done this in the past in person, and we've been in person at Spalding High School, either in the library or in the cafeteria. And last year, all of those annual meetings were pushed to Australian ballot. So we did not do this last year. So we haven't done a hybrid option ever before. So that's a really good question. And I'm not sure how that's going to be handled. Guy? Guy, you're on mute. Guy?
I think both clerks will have an updated voter checklist. So whether it's virtual or in person, they'll have that checklist in front of them.
Okay, so then they can confirm that the person attending that is voting is on one of those checklists.
Correct.
Okay.
They would probably have to state their name, when they're voting, or identify themselves when they first be at the meeting, so they can, verify that they're a voter.
Right. Okay. So we'll have to go through. That might take a little bit of time to go through and make sure everybody there is a registered voter. We can ask Tina and Carol. Okay. So are there any other questions? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the warning for the Barre Unified Union School District annual meeting with the amendment to add via Google Meet?
I don't think we moved on this. Did I miss that?
Oh. No, we didn't. I'm sorry. Can I get I'm usually really on this. Thank you, Andrea. Can I get someone to make a motion to approve this warning? Thanks, Alice, with the amendment.
Second.
Thank you, Sarah. Wow, thanks, Andrea. Okay, any questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Alice, yes. Guy, yes. Sarah, yes. Giuliano?
Aye.
Thank you. Tim, yes. Chris, yes. Gina, yes. Renee, yes. Okay, so we'll have to figure out how to confirm registered voters. All right, moving on. Thank you all for being patient. That was a lot. Next is 5.13. We're have tabled 5.8 to 5.12, which are all policies that are to come before the board, and those are going to happen at the end of the month at our January 27th meeting. So we're going to move to 5.13, which is a special board meeting on January 19th. And the reason that this is on your agenda is because I wanted to poll the board. That is for superintendent candidate interviews. And so I wanted to see if the board had any interest in doing a hybrid option, in person and or virtual. The beginning of the meeting will be in open session, and then we'll go into executive session for interviews. So I just wanted to know if the board, if any members of the board wanted to do an actual in-person meeting, and if so, we can figure out and arrange that, but it has to be decided so it can be warned. Anybody interested in that, or would you prefer to do hybrid or virtual? Gina?
I have a feeling I might be in the minority here, but as someone who's dealing with 6 out of 16 people with COVID at work right now, I am feeling very hesitant to increase my exposure at all. And no one has a crystal ball, but it doesn't feel like things are going to get better in the next week or two. So at this point, I feel like, I feel like we're pretty good at doing virtual interviews. I think this board has a fairly good rapport. We've got a pretty good system for pulling it off, and we familiar with the candidate so that we are not losing that sort of gut feeling when you meet somebody in person to try to find out if they're a sociopath or whatnot. So I'm comfortable with the virtual option.
Okay. Guy?
Ditto.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to assume that you guys would be fine with it, which is why I'm bringing it to you. So if you're fine with a virtual option, we can go ahead with a virtual option. Okay. I think we have to have an in-person option for the first part of it because it's an open meeting, which makes things a little bit more interesting because, well, I won't get into the particulars, but Guy?
It was Carol part of the team, or is that are we beyond that now?
I don't think Carol has to approve has to be at the interview, but that's another question. Do we want to have Carol participate or be in the discussion after? Do we want her to sit in on the interview? I guess that's another question.
Well, again, the reason I asked is she could be in the same room with Chris, and that might cross that T or dot that I, but maybe David will be able to answer the question.
Yeah, David, do you have an answer for us?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bill that passed the House and the Senate this week that waives the need for the physical location. It hasn't been, I mean, it's on its way to Scott, but he hasn't signed it yet, but the expectation is that he will. The same was true of your annual meeting, that you didn't need to do that either. There was a separate bill that addressed that.
Thank you for that. I thought that was just for the annual meetings, the town meetings. I didn't think it was for, any board meeting. And that's
S-172 was the first one that passed, and it didn't include that, but there was S-222, which passed this week, changed the open meeting law essentially back to what it was a year ago. Okay. And so you don't need the physical, assuming Scott signs it, you don't need the physical location anymore, and things go back to the way they were. The old normal after the old normal.
during the state of emergency, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can paste the text in the chat if you want, but
no, I believe you. I know I've read something about it. I didn't know it applied. I thought it was just when I was reading it.
There were two bills that moved this week. One of them had to do with petitions and commingling, and that passed both the House and the Senate like in 3 days. And the other one had to do with the open meeting law, and that did as well. They were sort of S-222 and S-223.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Carol Hebert.
Hi. So I didn't have a chance to verbally say I'm in on the meeting. And that's part of the open meeting law, right?
No, I don't think you have to because we can see you. We can see the list of people.
Okay. So if it was just like a phone number dial in, then you'd want to know who that person is.
Correct.
Okay. Awesome. I'm here. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess we can just do a virtual meeting, and we will warn it as a virtual meeting, and it will be the first part will be open meeting, then we'll go into executive session, and then we'll come back out into open meeting if we have action to take or to adjourn. Is that okay with everybody? We don't have to take action, but if I see everybody kind of like, yeah, that's fine, then okay, perfect. All right. Renee.
Sonia, are we going to have any kind of meeting beforehand to plan that?
That's a really good question. No. Unless you would like to have another meeting. But we can, I think you're probably thinking about interview questions and how that night is going to go. And I can chat with Carol, and I can check in with you. But if there's anybody that has any other questions, I'm guessing that's what you're thinking about.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking.
Okay. So what I will do is ask Carol to share the interview questions that we used, that the committee used when interviewing candidates, so that you'll have an idea of what those are. And then if there are other questions that you would like to ask, then we can come up with our own list of questions as well. And she may be able to provide alternative questions. And since we know the candidate, you may have some that are very specific. So feel free to write your own question, and we can build that. We will build in a little bit of time ahead of interviewing to make sure that we understand what the questions are and how the night will go. So is that helpful, Renee?
Yeah, I want to make sure that it's not just completely exactly the same questions all over again.
Nope. Yep.
I don't want the candidate to have to go through the same questioning all over again.
Perfect.
It's already been done once.
I completely understand. Carol?
Hi, I just wanted to tell you that I'll get that information out to you tomorrow from the candidate packet and the results from the forum.
Oh, yes. Perfect.
And so I'll put the questions with those.
Okay. Thank you. That would be great. Any other questions regarding the special board meeting next week, January 19th? Okay. Hearing none, we will move on to old business. 6.1 is enrollment. Home study update, and you have a couple of tables in your packet, and we have had this on our agenda for several months just to be able to get a sense of where the numbers are going. And I think as Guy noted during the discussion about the budget and about equalized pupils, there's definitely a number of students who are included on the home study report, and that definitely impacts our equalized pupils. And as Lisa noted during that discussion as well, because we were held harmless last year, we basically were allowed to just use the numbers from the previous year. So we are absorbing the impact of 2 years in this year in one budget. So that's why that feels like a very or a larger decrease than normal. So and is having a larger impact on that calculation. Chris?
Thanks, Sonia. I just want to reinforce something that I think came up the last time we shared this report. And that is that in both Berry City and Berry Town, grades K through 4, we do not have any outside place students right now. This is something our community should be very, very proud of. I want some of the newer community members who are here tonight to know that. It has huge implications financially for the district, but more importantly, it's keeping kids home and in our schools where we want them to be. Related to that, the numbers we do have in the middle school, we are looking to keep a number of those kiddos here through potentially expanding what C offers in grades 7 and 8. So it's just something important to think about. Our mission, our goal to keep kids home and meet their needs right here. So, but I'm very, very proud of those K4 numbers. It's very encouraging for us, especially given what the challenges we're facing these last 2 years.
Absolutely. Guy?
Yeah, Chris, thank you for saying that. I also want to put it in perspective from a budget standpoint, because I've signed warrants in the past. We're talking about a pupil rate tonight of like 16 plus. When we're doing outplacements, 16 plus is like chump change. We're talking 50,000, 100,000, 150,000. So just so people understand that.
Thanks, Guy. Sarah?
Thank you. I just had a question, just so I'm looking at this. It looks like we've had an increase in total students between December and January for both Berry City and Berry Town. But it looks like the C enrollment dropped 7 kids in a month. Is there a particular reason for that?
I actually do not have an answer to that. That has not been reported to me in my weekly meetings with them. I can find out though. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So, Chris, if you can find out and even just shoot us an email to follow up, that would be helpful. Thanks. Tim?
While I'm certainly not a fan of any kind of budget increase, if this is a significant savings that we're already experiencing this might be good on your court to say we've experienced this much savings, blah, 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 however long it is.
Because we don't have as many students outplaced.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that you make a really good point. And I think having been doing this for a little while, I mean, I remember sitting at the time I was a Berry City board member, and I was actually talking to Jim Taffel and Stacy Anderson and asking them how we could reduce the number of students we had outplaced. And here it is actually in real numbers. So they were like, we have to build capacity. It takes time. And so it's really good to see that, you have to start somewhere, and you don't see immediate, really big impacts, but it's little by little over time. So this is really, really helpful to see. Sarah?
Sort of off topic, but just feeding on what Tim said, and that was a great idea, Tim. Our next finance committee meeting is meant to be kind of a working meeting on ideas on how to present this budget to the community. So, as Tim mentioned, that's, a good idea to kind of explain how we're creating efficiencies and saving money with the C program. So anybody has any of those other ideas like that, please email me or show up at the next finance meeting.
Thanks, Sarah. I would definitely include the C program, but I also think you should include, like, how much money are we saving by not having students outplaced in our K through 4 grades as well at Berry City and Berrytown. Because if we had students who were outplaced right now, that would be costing us more money. So, and those are the kinds of positions. They're, behavior interventionists, and they're paraeducators, and their support staff. So I think it may help to explain what one of Alice's questions earlier was, why are we adding these things? So that might help sort of tell that story more completely. So thanks for that. Thanks, Tim. Anything else on the district enrollment or home study update? Andrea?
I was just wondering if the drop in C in the increase in the other schools are potentially students that got transferred from C who were able to rejoin. No,
I don't believe so.
It was hope. It was a hope.
That's a goal for some of the kiddos. But remember, C and some of those kiddos, even though C just started, had been with the program for a number of years when it was over at the Wall Complex. So there is that possibility at semester breaks at the end of the year, but I'm almost certain none of them have transferred back to Spalding. Remember, they're all high school kiddos.
Yeah.
But I'll find out that drop in 7. I'll find out what's going on with that. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Moving on to the 6.2 is a COVID update. And Chris, I'm not sure if you gave us your superintendent's report. Do you want to combine this with your superintendent's report, or do you want to do a strict COVID update?
My goal would be to just simply give an update around COVID. I think that basically the COVID context right now, what we're looking at, the superintendent report I shared with you, though I did not get into the weeds of what we've all been experiencing in that report intentionally, taking more of a future-oriented approach with that report. If you haven't had a chance to read it, I encourage you to do so. As school board members, I know getting articles sent and saying, "Hey, read this," can be a slog for folks. But that article that I did share with you, especially given some of the conversation that's been happening this evening, I strongly encourage folks to read it. But before I answer any questions about the superintendent's report, I just want to give a quick update on the COVID context right now. I'm not a person who likes to throw hyperbole around really strong words unless it's necessary. But schools in Vermont right now are in the midst of a crisis. And I cannot state enough the impact of this Omicron variant and combined with nearly 2 years of this pandemic, what it's been doing to school communities all around the country, obviously. I can speak to how it's impacting us. This has been an extraordinarily challenging 2 weeks since we returned on January 3rd. To be very clear to anybody listening and watching, and I've shared this in various communications, we are in a day-to-day, hour-to-hour situation trying to keep our schools open. The commingling that Mr. Delcourt talked about in legislatures and all these meetings, our teachers and kids are commingling en masse every day in the midst of this pandemic. And the stresses of that are having an impact. There is no doubt about it. Our district has been a marvel in many ways to a lot of my colleagues around the state, how we have been able to keep our schools open, given having among the highest case counts in Vermont. And the term I use, again, another hyperbolic word, miraculous, but the miraculous teamwork, flexibility, open-mindedness, care for kids in the community at large that our principals, teachers, and staff are showing every day, and our parents and our families to make this work is absolutely extraordinary. We finally reached a breaking point on Tuesday. We had to make the very, very challenging decision to close based on what we were seeing for numbers in terms of staff being out. We made that decision in a very rare way on the evening before because we wanted to give families the chance to plan because there's nothing worse than getting that 5 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning call or text. So we made that decision. But it's important that the board and all community members know that we are making these decisions hour to hour. We are right now planning on being open tomorrow, all of our schools, with the exception of 3 grades in Barry City, grades 3, 7, and 8. We simply will not have the staff to safely open our schools in an operational manner, let alone an academic manner. We're just simply being able to safely open. So those notifications have gone out to families. Throughout this meeting, I've been getting communications from the principals at Barry City that the community has been very supportive of that decision. Certainly what I'm getting so far indicates the same. But obviously, what our neighboring schools are dealing with, what we're dealing with is taking its toll. So I just want to be very clear about that. I mentioned in my board report that the support the school board, all of you have shown to me, to the principals, to our faculty and staff, has been extraordinary. It's been noticed, it's been felt, and we appreciate it. I ask that you continue doing it. It's so important right now. There's a fragility to our school staff right now that is real. We have to note it. We got to be careful of it. So with that, I just want to give a couple quick updates based on the communication that we sent out on Sunday night. As all of us recall, last Friday evening, a big bomb was dropped by the AOE that big changes are coming. I kind of was anticipating these changes. In fact, in some ways, we were moving toward making them anyway, because we had no choice, given the high case counts that we were facing. We simply couldn't go about things in the old way. So what unfortunately happened was that the fact that it was released out to the media, shared throughout the state, created lots of confusion over that weekend. Your leadership team was working around the clock during the weekend with the COVID team to make sure we had something coherent to share with our community as they came back to school. And if there are any parents here, it just had to be mind-boggling what folks were dealing with, because it certainly was for us. So what I want to do is just give a couple quick updates based on a few topics from that update I sent on Sunday. There's still a real lack of clarity with some of these things, but I'm going to do my best. The first is around contact tracing. Families will notice that the communications going home right now are much different than they used to be. Right now, basically what we're doing is simply notifying families that their child was in a class where there was a positive case. That's it. There's no line lists occurring, no contact tracing happening. We were ready to make that decision in the middle of last week, even before this guidance came out. But candidly, the process has not been doable for months now. And it's made lots of other operations incredibly challenging for us to do, to include just basic school nursing. So we were relieved that that happened, but it does raise a lot of questions. And for some families and teachers, for that matter, some concerns. If we're not doing that, how are we ensuring that we're safe? But the reality is contact tracing is not effective, especially with this Omicron surge going on. The next piece is around test availability. The big bomb that came out this weekend was that essentially schools are going to be test distribution centers, and that is still in the works. The problem is around supply. We're anticipating the need for, in these coming weeks, many thousands of tests, not the couple hundred that we've gotten so far, but many thousands to make this work. We've been assured that this afternoon by the AOE that by Tuesday, we'll have an adequate supply of tests to get us through the next couple weeks. I hope that is the case. When that happens, we'll be sending out messaging to families to let them know if they are notified that there was a positive case in their kiddo's classroom, how to get these tests. We're still working out the logistics of that. But this is a huge undertaking that schools are taking on right now, and we're still trying to figure out the logistics of it. But I think anybody who's tried to get tests these last couple of weeks knows there is a shortage, and it is very hard to do. So we have to be very careful about requiring families to do this when they can't do it. And that's where there's a lot of confusion right now. Another piece that I want folks to know about is around face masks. We have placed an order for 2,000 KN95 masks, which for now, we're going to reserve for our faculty and staff. We're trying to get a bigger supply for some of our older students, but there too is a supply problem. But the order is in. We're hoping to get them by next week. We will obviously keep people posted on that. And the final thing is just around our decision-making around school closures. I've kind of already addressed that. When we made the decision to close on Tuesday, I immediately put in a waiver through the Agency of Education that this was, though the temperatures were extreme, we've certainly been able to open schools and when it's 5 below zero before. The problem was with all the staff that we had out on Tuesday, the high case counts and the probable need to have kiddos inside all day was just going to exacerbate the staffing issue. So it was kind of a perfect storm. But I've put in a waiver to get that school day excused. I hope we don't have to do it again. But we put a lot of thought, the principals, myself, leadership teams, into making these decisions, and we take it very seriously. So I anticipate finally here having a reasonably accurate, coherent update to share with everybody tomorrow before we go home for the weekend about what next week is going to look like. We're still waiting for updates from Department of Health, Agency of Education. Any of you here who are educators in other districts, Renee, Chris, others know there's a lot of waiting game going on right now and a lot of scrambling. So I know that was a lot. The last thing I'll share is that in our update tomorrow, I will have updated numbers about vaccination status for staff and kiddos. We have a pretty decent handle on those numbers now, in addition to some attendance data that we've been seeing in the last 2 weeks around staff absences and kiddo absences, so people can have a context of what we're looking at. So I ask if you have any questions. I know it's a lot. Renee?
Hey, Chris. So first I want to say I completely, I feel for you, and I feel for the district, and I feel for the students. It really is truly a nightmare in central Vermont right now in all of our schools. And so I completely understand and I appreciate your compassion as far as supporting the teachers and trying to give them everything you can and recognizing how hard it is. I just have a question, and you may have gone over it before or it may have changed. And so I'm just curious for my own knowledge. For as far as when, like you said, there's a couple grades that aren't going to be in person tomorrow. When that happens with certain grades, is there remote learning going on, or is it more like a snow day?
We have to understand that the reason the grades are closed is because we have significant numbers of staff who are out sick, potentially with COVID symptoms. We have to be very careful about how that works. Right now, and I wrote this in my report on Sunday, I know there's a lot of concern around remote options. Of course, we're not being given any clearance to count remote days. But the bigger issue is with this crisis that we're in right now, I need to be very, very clear. Our teachers have got to put all of their resources and attention into their in-person instruction. It isn't so easy, and I've said this repeatedly, to just turn on a dime and teach virtually, particularly when numbers of your teammates are out sick. It gets back to that sort of crisis point. Now, can resources be made available for when kiddos are out? I know that on the Seesaw platform and Google Classroom, there are resources for kiddos to access. But for now, for those kiddos, it will be largely considered a snow day. It's not ideal. We're not even going to pretend that it's ideal. But right now, our teachers, and the time they get, the limited time they have for planning and prep, they've got to put it into building up their in-person instruction. Remember, a lot of our folks on a day-to-day basis are losing their planning time to cover other classes. This is day to day. So that's another important thing to consider about how people are stepping up.
Great. Thank you for explaining that, Chris.
Sure. Guy.
So a technicality. So there's, for those of you, if it's an additional snow day beyond what others have, will they be required to make that up?
What we anticipate right now, and I can't answer that specifically, Guy, but we cannot answer that yet. But in terms of like for the full closures, I anticipate that the state is going to waive those days. There are schools around Vermont that have had many more days out for their schools than we have. I mean, we've only had one. Actually, we did have one day for Barrytown right around Labor Day when this thing first blew up. So, but as a district, we've only had one. But I think a key thing to understand, we're talking about making up, catching up. Every day, our teachers, our principals, all of us, we're meeting kids where they're at in that moment. When I say, we're all hurting, our kids are hurting too. And we've got to make sure we don't bury them further. This is essential. There's a fragility to their social emotional well-being right now for many reasons. We're meeting those kids where they're at when they come in on Tuesday morning. The Peak and Ujamaa teams at Barry City will do that. The third grade team will as well. If we have to decide to make any other closures across Barrytown or Spalding tonight or early tomorrow morning, and that is a possibility, we'll treat those kiddos the exact same way. But I have to stress, this is touch and go. I may have more information about closures to share before this meeting is over. That's where we're at.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. That was the COVID update. Your next on the agenda is 7 reports, and the first one is 7.1, and it's your superintendent report.
Just have 2 things to add to that.
Okay.
A couple resignations. These are thankfully more traditional resignations worthy of congratulations. The first is Jim Willis, who is a math interventionist at Spalding High School, has announced his retirement. at the end of the year. So congratulations to Jim. I believe Jim has been at Spalding, has been a real big burst of energy. Kids love him. He's been there, I think, since I started at Barry City in 2018. And another one, I'm celebrating for him. I've known him for years. Clifton Long, our HVAC instructor at Career Center of Vermont, has accepted another position effective in the fall of 2023. We are very, very sorry. Jody, if you're still here, you would agree. Yep, you're here. I see you. We're very, very sorry to see Clifton move on, but we wish him well. He's an extraordinary guy, and deserves the opportunity. So I just want to make sure the board knew that those two folks have moved on or will be moving on at the end of the year.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Anything else for your report?
Nope.
All right. Moving on to 7.2, the building reports. You have reports in your packet. Is there anybody who has any questions or comments about any of the reports?
Sonia, I have something to add to the Barry Town report.
Sure, go ahead.
A little birdie in the chat reminded me that a young lady named Elizabeth Howard was the Barry Town Student of the Month. Elizabeth, if you're still watching, listening, you've probably seen our school showcases. This is the kind of stuff I would love to know all about Students of the Month at Barry Town. So talk to your teachers, talk to Miss Nye, Miss Pearson. Doesn't take much for Mr. Allen and I to get up there with our camera. So congratulations to you, and very happy for you.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions or comments about building reports? Chris Parker.
I'll just say, just as always, reading all of these and hearing about all the stuff that's going on in the schools, despite the challenges and despite the staff shortages and people getting sick and all of that, just incredibly impressive what these schools continue to pull off day after day after day. And I love just reading about the celebrations, the exciting stuff happening, and it's really going on in all the buildings. So just way to go, everybody, making the best out of this situation. And thanks for sharing all that stuff with us.
Across the street tonight, the concert was a big success, I've been hearing. So it's still happening.
Awesome. The only thing I would add in that same vein, Chris, is that when I was reading the CVCC building report, it says alumni visits continued, and I must have missed that they had come in before. And so with the emergency services and the plumbing and heating, and I think emergency services, I imagine everybody knew about that because of the big helicopter landing. And
that was awesome.
Yeah.
We froze, but it was worth it.
So I just think that that's great. I'm glad that alumni are coming back and encouraging students at the Career Center, and I think that's really neat. So
I think in at least 2 or 3 of our showcases, we've been able to shout out alumni, either who are working in these places or were coming back. Alex Jarvis coming back with the emergency service. Jody and I both had him as a student. That was just, I mean, look, this is why we do this. This is why we do it. This guy is made good. And I watched him working with those kids for about 20 minutes. I mean, wow. I mean, it was just wonderful. So we got to celebrate that stuff.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Hearing no other questions or comments about building reports, thank you everybody for those. We'll move on to our committee reports. And first is communications. And Alice, I think we had a late addition of minutes in our addendum for communications and finance and facilities. So Alice, would you like to go first?
Yes, our report is very quick. At the time of our meeting, we had come together to have that, and then in discussion with Mr. Hennessy and Mr. Allen, it was determined because of their needs and the needs of the district on the evening of our communications meeting that we decided to postpone the meeting and we will put anything that was on the agenda on our next agenda, and most certainly a lot of it the considerations that we would have talked about at that meeting regarding budget information have been tossed around tonight as well, so that everybody's pretty much up to date on where we're going with communications. Our big press at this time is that budget information.
Thanks, Alice. I'm assuming there are no questions for Alice. Andrea?
I just wanted to confirm, are you still on for February 3rd, or were you going to try to hold a meeting this month and on a different day, or are you sticking with February 3rd?
For the communications meeting? Is that what you're asking about?
Yes.
We'll go ahead with February 3rd.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Next is finance. Sarah?
Thank you. So I don't have much to add because much of what we discussed at finance we brought to the board tonight. I do have something, Sonia, you're going to be mad at me, and Andrea might call me out of order. But we just got notification from Lisa, and just in the interest of transparency, I didn't want to wait until next meeting. We just tonight, just within an hour or so ago, got an updated equalized pupil count from the state, and they're saying we have an additional 41.61 students. So the warning that we approved earlier is incorrect. Lisa has emailed the updated numbers, but I don't know if we can change that now or if we're going to have to do it at the next meeting. It's good news for us all.
It's worth it.
Yeah. So
I'm really sorry.
No, it is what it is, but that's the thing about the equalized pupils is they're not just like a set in stone number. They're calculated. They have to be, the business office has to look them over, and then they appeal like, wait, this isn't exactly right. So it sounds like they have been adjusted, which is in our favor because we've added 41.61 students. So I think because we had some questions about the language, we'll just let that warning stay as it is, and we'll just add that to our special meeting agenda to tweak the, it will just be the amount, the budget amount is still the same. It'll just be the warning that we'll have to.
Right. So the warning will change. What it's going to look like is the per pupil spending is a lower percent. It's a lower amount.
Yeah.
I have those numbers, but they're not definite yet. I just didn't want it to, because, next week's meeting may not have as many members of the public. I didn't want it to seem like, but like I said, we just barely got this information.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll add that to our agenda for our special meeting. Okay. So nothing else for you for finance?
Nothing else.
Okay. Any questions for Sarah? All right. Hearing none. Guy, next up is facilities and transportation. Would you like to talk about your meeting?
Sure. Yeah, we met, January 10th, had a robust discussion about, school bus transportation, and the results of that is that we're going to, continue to talk about it a little bit more frequently. Jamie gave us an update on electric bus transportation, and I think in the next week or so, we're going to be seeing electric buses going up and down the hill. Talked about stormwater update runoff, and had some good news about the ESSER grant application, that they're going to be able to roll in the sprinkler, system into that particular application. So it was a very upbeat meeting. We are scheduled to meet again on February 14th.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions for Guy? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to 7.6, which is the policy committee. And Chris Parker, would you like to talk about your meeting?
Yeah, sure. So you can see that tonight we were originally going to talk about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 policies. We have been waiting on some to move for a first reading for some legal vetting that has gotten us to a place to bring things to the board, and a few other policies, specifically the fiscal management and the firearms policies that have had some robust discussions, I would say, and those are continuing. So look forward to getting an opportunity to continue with that at our meeting on the 27th, the board meeting for those first readings. But then our next meeting is this coming Monday, the 17th, I believe it is. Yes. And our legal counsel, Pietro Lynn, is going to be attending. And the purpose for him coming is to talk about how we look at the implementation sections of the model policies from the VSBA and how those are looked at as procedures for the different schools, and how we keep those in our policies or how we remove the policies and put them toward procedures at the individual school buildings, and how administrators might work to get those procedures in place. So if anyone's interested in that discussion, I would say that's a big part of our meeting on Monday, and please come. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Hennessy?
Just a quick thing about that, given that Monday is a holiday, Pietro might be submitting his points in writing to us. I'm still trying to work that out, just so we know. Okay. But it's MLK Day that day, so more to follow. But one way or another, we'll hear from him.
Great.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for Chris Parker about her report? Okay, hearing none. Renee is up next with 7.7 curriculum meeting. It doesn't look like one happened in December. Renee, do you want to give us a preview, if you know, about the January 25th meeting?
So we ended up, I'm going to be honest, I just got the agenda yesterday and I haven't looked at it because like Chris, I'm in the throes of COVID in schools. But we did not have a meeting last month because the curriculum team is getting themselves settled. And at the same time, we were supposed to meet during break. And so we didn't want to ask the teachers and stuff to come to meetings during their break. So I'm going to be looking over the agenda hopefully tonight or tomorrow, and then I'll know better what's going on.
Look it over tomorrow, Renee. Look it over tomorrow. And says Mr. Hennessy. But I also want to add that we will have assessment data to share that evening. Our MTSS coordinator, Karen Fredericks, is going to be presenting. So we'll have some stuff to share. And we'll also have an update around the director of curriculum position hiring process too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next is negotiations committee. Gina, I'm guessing.
There's really no update. We finished and we'll start again soon.
Well, and I think we finished teachers and we finished paraeducators, and now I think we have to look towards
Just let me have this one meeting, Sonia. Come now. There's nothing going on with negotiations right now.
At this exact moment, no.
Correct.
Yes. So the next meeting is to be determined. We'll give Gina her moment. Okay. So next is other business and roundtable, and I will start with the list that we've been using for voting. So Alice, do you have anything you'd like to share for other business or roundtable?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Alice. Guy, anything from you?
Yeah, a couple things. I just want to ditto what Chris Parker said. It's always enlightening when you're hearing all this bad news to hear some of the good news. Certainly want to welcome back Giuliano to the board. He's being silent per usual, but I'm sure he's back there thinking. Also want to again raise a glass to Jody and her team for the work that they've done at the Career Center. And if you haven't been able to visit any of the Career Center classes, particularly Clifton Long's class, stop in. He's been an amazing teacher. It's going to be a huge loss for our district. It's a great opportunity for him. I've grown to really admire his approach to education. If I remember correctly, I think he's done things like, I think for the last couple of years, I think every one of his students has passed the plumber's apprenticeship first year piece, which is huge in terms of money. So, a big shout out to him. Also want to give a big shout out to the sports teams. Chris talked about, the emotional stuff that's going on, and, we've been able to, to continue, and we've had pretty successful teams. The wrestling team's doing great. The Lady Tide hockey team is undefeated. Everybody else is doing really well. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Natalie Lavin, because I don't know if people know this or not, but what ADs are going through today, is like everybody else in the administration, but they're dealing with cancellations. They're dealing with inconsistencies with other teams, visiting teams. It's just a you-know-what show. So I say that because I ran into somebody when I picked up coffee, and they mentioned it to me. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned it tonight. And also, I told Little Bird told me tonight that Elizabeth Howard was the student of the month at Berrytown. So a big shout out to her.
She gets a double shout out. Awesome. Thanks, Guy. All right, moving on to Sarah.
I really just kind of wanted to make a comment. We talk about our work as a board and how we rely on the administrators and our directors to kind of guide us, because they are, the experts in their field. But I just kind of wanted to acknowledge and give thanks to Andrea, because she keeps us so above board with these meetings, and the wealth of knowledge that you are. We really, really appreciate it. And also David Delcor for keeping us up to date on the legislation that's passing when we don't have time to keep up with it.
Yes. Thank you, Sarah. Giuliano?
Yep. Thank you, Guy. It is nice to be back for my very first meeting. I did, however, miss my ninth graders' performance at Spalding. So there is a give and take to that, which is part of the deal.
Yeah. Did they happen to record it, or? Yeah, Chris Hennessy says yeah. So hopefully we'll be able to catch it after the meeting. Sorry about that, Giuliano, but thank you for coming, and thank you for stepping up. Tim Bolton, do you have anything you want to add during roundtable?
Nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And Chris Parker?
My only thing I wanted to say was just about the calendar, the school calendar for next week. Just an unfortunate maybe lining up of multiple things all at once. High school kids next week are potentially only going to be in school 2 days, because Monday's MLK holiday, Tuesday's in service, and Friday is their callback day that you only have to go if you are finishing up on assessing anything. So that leaves lots of kids, I think, only going to school potentially 2 days next week. So just when we're making calendars and seeing how end of semester and holidays and in-services line up, maybe looking at maybe not getting as many of those on 1 week, especially given how kids are in and out because of sickness and closures and stuff like that. So just trying not to stack those up. That's my only comment for tonight on that. Thank you.
Thanks,
Chris Barry is taking the lead on the regional calendar this year. It will be better.
Awesome.
It will be better.
Thank you. Gina?
I don't have anything else for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee?
I think the only thing I have is that I just wanted to thank Chris Hennessy, not Parker, even though Chris Parker, you're wonderful. Just for doing the videos and the communications out. I have found those videos that you're making incredibly helpful and really exciting to just see what's actually going on. I personally, I don't know if the other board members feel the same way, but I've been hesitant to go into schools just because of COVID. And if I get exposed at one school and I'm bringing it to another school, I don't want to do that. And so it's been really helpful, and I hope that you continue to do them because they're really great.
Thanks, Renee. Chris Hennessy, I'm going to give you the last word. I would like to also jump on the giving a shout out to Lisa in our business office, and specifically Lisa, because the budget season, as she indicated, starts in August, September. She starts thinking, she's thinking about the budget all the time, but she starts planning for the next budget and making sure that we as a board are aware of the process beginning in August. And it's a long process and there are a lot of moving parts. And as Sarah said, we thought it was sort of put to bed at this point, and it's still not. So she is a huge asset to our district. And I just want to thank her and the rest of the business office for all of the work that they do, because talking about people keeping us on the straight and narrow and keeping us apprised of what's going on, she is a gem and we appreciate everything that she does. So I also wanted to thank all of our community members for attending. I will say that we continue to have lots of new faces and people who've been coming. And so I appreciate that people are tuning in and participating and asking questions, because it's just nice to have community members here and paying attention and understanding what's going on and having a better sense of what the board's doing and what the work is that we are some of the initiatives and the policies and the things that we are talking about. And especially now at budget time, I'm hoping that if there have been any questions that have come up for you, or concerns, or any suggestions, that you please just reach out to me or one of the other board members or the superintendent, and we will hopefully be able to address your concerns and give you answers to your questions. And with that, Chris, do you have anything else you'd like to add for other business or roundtable?
I don't think I have anything else to add. Thank you, though.
All right. So next we'll talk about future agenda items. And I'm going to ask Andrea, when I'm talking about future agenda items, because we have 2 future agendas, can I talk about both?
Yeah, just indicate what you want when.
Okay. So for the special board meeting on January 19th, we will have to have the warning. There will be an amended warning for the BUUSD per Sarah's update that she has seen by the email from Lisa. So we'll have that on the warning, and we'll also have superintendent interviews. So that will be primarily it for that meeting. And then on the 27th, we will have all of the normal things: public comment, student voice, consent agenda for approving minutes, and new hires. We will have all of the policies that we have tabled until that meeting. We will still have a COVID update. I would like to suggest that we move the enrollment home study update to quarterly, unless the rest of the board is adverse to that. I'd like to just have that be quarterly rather than every single month. Gina says okay. Anybody else who's not okay with that? Okay. I'm going to take your lack of, there's no like big brouhaha about it. So let's just leave it at quarterly. Andrea.
So I'm going to presume that because we want it quarterly and don't want to forget it, it should go in the parking lot.
Yes.
And which, do you have particular months in which you want it presented, that you want to document?
I definitely think, earlier in the year is, as you're thinking about the school year, I think having a September quarterly. So then just from there, I would say September, January. Well, obviously quarterly, we don't really run through the summer. So it'd maybe just be 3 times a year. But yes, parking lot is a great idea. And I think that's it. Is there anything that I have missed for future agenda items or anything that anybody else would like to add for future agenda items? Should we, Sarah Pregent, talk about the FY23 budget in any way, shape, or form? Should we put that on the agenda?
I don't think there's going to be much to discuss. If we approve the warning at the next meeting, finance won't meet again until just after that, where we're going to work on some ideas on how to communicate to the public what we're doing. So probably not for January 25th.
Okay, then we will leave that off. And communications as well is after that meeting, so we'll just come back to how
27th, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll come back to the FY23 budget at the beginning of February to talk about how we're communicating about that. Okay, I think that's everything then. So moving on to item 10 on your agenda, our next meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for January 19th. It's a special board meeting. And then the next regular board meeting is on January 27th. And with that, we come to number 11, which is Andrea.
Just before we do that, generally in these meetings, we kind of give a brief overview of the process for folks who want to run for seats. And Dave Delcourt can tell us if in fact, I believe the legislation that went today, as long as the governor signs it, will mean that people don't have to get petitions signed, but they will have to see the town and city clerks to get consent forms signed.
Right.
And I'm trying to recall what the deadline is for that.
I can tell you that, but maybe
I think it's the 24th, but
no, because school boards fall under a different statute. So, and too much to Carol Dawes' chagrin, we have 30 days ahead. So I think we fall as January 31st. So petitions, I think petitions have been waived, but maybe David Delcourt could weigh in on that. Definitely consent forms. If you are interested in running for any of the open positions for the BUSD, and I assume for CVCC, if you're interested in that one seat that's representing the BUSD at large seat, then you'd have to get your you could go to the websites. I think the town and the city both have those consent forms on their websites. And if petitions are required, those are also on your website, but those may have been waived. So it may just be putting a consent form in to get on the ballot. Guy?
Yeah, we might just want to send out a alert to all the warnings that we passed tonight because they need to be signed. So where and when and all that stuff that needs to happen. Might need a heads up on that.
We will do that, but there will be a slight delay because of the change in the equalized pupil. So we'll send you a reminder next week after we pass the revised warning. But yes, those warnings will all need to be signed, and everyone will need to get to the central office to sign those. And I'm sure Tina will be sending us reminders and then following up with you if you need additional reminders. So next, and so Andrea, did that answer the question? I'm sorry about getting, you don't really have to get petitions. I don't think you don't have to get petitions signed, but consent forms, I believe, are due by the 31st of January. If someone wants to run.
I think it has to get the final signature from the governor. David, is that correct?
I'm not sure if David's.
Maybe David left us.
Well, maybe he's listening to another meeting. Multitasking. Okay, well, keep your eye on the Times Argus. I'm sure he'll report on it as soon as it's has been passed. So next is executive session, and I actually have set up a meeting and I have invited all of you, and it should be on your calendars. And because the next item in executive session is superintendent evaluation, so we don't need to invite the superintendent in. We're just going to discuss the evaluation feedback form that we received. And then the way that the process goes is I will as the chair, will sit down with the superintendent and have a conversation about that. Also incorporating any feedback from the board that we talk about in this executive session. So Alice?
There doesn't seem to be any sign-in information on your invitation.
Okay. Well, it's the first time I've ever set up a meeting, so I'm not sure.
It's a nice invitation, but it doesn't appear to be any way to get to the meeting.
So if you look at your calendar, can you find the link? Oh no, there's no link there.
There's no link. There's an invitation. No link.
How did I set up a meeting without a link?
Sonia, all you have to do when you set up the meeting is, so you can go back into the setup and just click add virtual option.
How do I go back in?
Go to your calendar.
Yeah.
And open it up.
There's a little edit button.
Oh, the pencil.
The pencil.
Add Google Meet.
Add Google Meet, yeah. And then you're gonna have to send it'll say send email to participants, and you say yes.
Oh, so wait, I have to hit save.
Save.
Would you like to send an update? Yes. Okay. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I would have wondered why. Well, I would have gotten off and then realized that there was no link. Gina?
This is when I'm so happy these meetings are recorded, because it keeps all of the things I want to say in check right now. But what I'm wondering is, can we have like 10 minutes before we start executive session?
Absolutely.
Thank
Yes.
you.
So I would look for a motion to go into executive session. I think we only need one motion. We're not inviting anyone in. So if Gina would like to make that motion, Sarah would like to second it. Any questions? All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. I see Gina. I see Guy. I see Chris. I see Alice. I see Sarah. I see Renee. I see Tim. Giuliano?
Aye.
Perfect. All right. So we are going into executive session. We're going to take a little break if you need to get something to eat or use the restroom, and we'll meet you in the other meeting shortly. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Chris Hennessy. You'll stop recording and do all the things. You're on mute.
I'm stopping recording. All right.
Awesome.
Good
Thank
night,
you so
everybody.
much. Good night.